It's no secret that over time, history eventually gives recognition to those brilliant minds who truly deserve it. What if I told you that today's movie is about one of the greatest geniuses of the last century? Someone who, according to many historians, shortened World War II by at least 2 years. Today, we're diving into a film about someone truly remarkable. Someone who, despite his neurodivergence, became a brilliant mathematician who cracked German communications. His achievements were kept secret for many years, and in return for his incredible contributions, his country repaid him with cruelty, simply for the crime of being different. We're talking about The Imitation Game, a movie inspired by the life of the genius Alan Turing. Remember that here at Frolic, we're always diving into movies, actors, series, and everything related to the world of film and entertainment. Comment, share, and subscribe to support us. Let's first do a quick recap of what the movie is about. Our protagonist, Alan Turing, is 15 years old and lives in a boarding school. He's shy, a bit odd, lonely, and gets bullied by his classmates. However, he becomes friends with Christopher, one of his schoolmates, who, with the help of a book, introduces him to the world of cryptography, a world that Alan quickly becomes fascinated by. Both of them excel in mathematics and will go on to be some of the best in cryptography. It's also clear that there's a deep affection between them that goes beyond friendship. Christopher goes on holiday with his parents, leaving Alan confused when he doesn't return. The headmaster delivers the tragic news: Christopher has died from bovine tuberculosis after drinking infected milk. This devastating loss leaves Turing desolate and alone once again for the next 2 years. Although the movie doesn't explicitly mention it, Turing grew up in an environment marked by the frequent absence of his parents, who worked in India. During his childhood in England, he showed an early intellectual capacity, teaching himself to read and developing a strong interest in numbers and puzzles. Christopher's premature death due to tuberculosis had a profound impact on Turing, shaping both his emotional life and his future scientific career. In fact, it deepened Alan Turing's transformation toward atheism and sparked his fascination with the connections between spirit and matter. He began questioning whether the human mind was inherently tied to the physical body or if it could exist independently. This inquiry, wondering if consciousness could be preserved within a machine, drove much of his life and career, motivating his significant contributions to science and computing. Now, getting back to the movie, it's 1939, and Alan arrives at a heavily fortified Victorian mansion for a meeting with the head of the government's secret school of code and cryptography, Commander Deniston. The interview doesn't go well. Deniston finds this Cambridge mathematician arrogant and conceited. Just as he's about to ask him to leave, Alan mentions the Enigma machine, the infamous German device. Deniston insists that Enigma is unbreakable, but Turing cheerfully responds that they should at least let him try. This machine, initially developed in the 1920s for commercial use, was adopted by the German military in 1923 and became an essential component of encrypted Nazi communication during World War II. The machine, similar to a typewriter, featured 26 keys and corresponding lights for each letter of the alphabet, along with 3 electromechanical rotors that substituted the input letter for another, complicating its decryption. The rotor settings, which were adjusted daily, allowed for messages that, while appearing as meaningless jumbles of letters, could be translated into readable text with the correct code. However, from a young age, Alan thought of the mind as a machine that could be replicated using mathematical logic. He believed that if we accept that real brains, those found in animals and, in particular, humans, are just a type of machine, then a properly programmed digital computer would eventually behave like a brain. This idea strengthened his belief that it was possible to crack German communications. Turing works alongside the other new recruits, including Alexander, a worldly man and chess champion, group leader John Coyne-Cross, a Scottish mathematician, Peter Hilton, an Oxford student, and Foreman and Richards, a pair of linguists. Deniston shows the team an Enigma machine. When Alan makes it clear he's not a team player, The newly appointed head of MI6, Stuart Menzies, quickly puts him in his place, reminding him that men are dying while they waste time. In response, Alan writes directly to Winston Churchill, expressing his dissatisfaction with the situation. Suddenly, by order of the Prime Minister, Alan is placed in charge of the Enigma team. His first move is to fire Foreman and Richards. Only one of them manages to stay on during the change. Alan then suggests a crossword puzzle competition to recruit a new member, much to the embarrassment of the team. The winner is a woman, a Cambridge math graduate named Joan Clark. Turing secretly includes her in the team, risking arrest by giving her Enigma messages to analyze, while he obsessively works on his own electromagnetic machine to crack the code, a machine he calls Christopher. Meanwhile, his teammates grow increasingly impatient with the lack of results. In reality, this machine wasn't designed as practical computing technology, but as a hypothetical device representing a computing machine. It was a thought experiment that no one imagined would, 30 years later, become the foundation of what we now know as computer science. It was also during his time in the United States that Turing became interested in cryptography through the art of encoding and decoding. The social struggles faced by someone with a neurodivergent condition like Turing's are not overlooked in the film. He awkwardly tries to make friends, but it might already be too late. Deniston wants to shut down the machine, and Clark threatens to go home. In a desperate attempt, Turing proposes to her. She accepts, even though she knows Alan is gay, and feels genuinely let down when he later breaks off the engagement to save her from the investigation into the Enigma messages. There's suddenly a breakthrough at a party. Helen, a friend of Clark's, mentions that she's been intercepting numerous messages from the same German radio operator. It seems there's a series of words that repeat, which might be a clue. Turing realizes that every message contains the word Hitler. Enigma can be cracked. Turing warns that they must be cautious with this knowledge. Lives will continue to be lost, but the codebreakers must not reveal their success to the enemy, or Enigma will be replaced. Under the codename Ultra, Bletchley Park becomes the largest repository of military intelligence in the world, drastically shortening the war. Turing and his team members can finally take their secrets into their civilian lives. Although considered a success, the decryption process was slow, and the pressure mounted due to the strategic importance of intercepting communications during the Battle of the Atlantic. The occasional capture of enemy vessels with Enigma keys, combined with the strategy of identifying common phrases in German messages, such as Hitler's signature, gradually facilitated decryption. Eventually, Turing and his team's efforts led to the decoding of up to 84,000 messages per month, decisively influencing the war's outcome on multiple fronts and misleading Hitler during Operation Bodyguard. This action misdirected the Nazis about the true location of the Normandy landings. Years later, Clark visits Turing and sees that he is merely a shadow of the man he once was. His mind is clouded by synthetic estrogen, the chemical cure he chose as an alternative to prison. He secretly continued passing messages to Clark during this time. He's still trying to work on a new model of Christopher, but is now unable to even solve a crossword puzzle. The police arrive at Turing's house. The troubled genius takes his own life. A half-eaten apple laced with cyanide is found next to his bed. But what drove him to this decision? Well, after the war ended on May 8, 1945, Turing had only 9 years left to live. 9 years in which he would be viewed with suspicion and distrust by the authorities, seen as a potential threat because he knew too much about sensitive intelligence matters. His individuality and homosexuality made him a security risk and a potential target for Soviet blackmail. From that point on, despite his genius never fading, doors began to close for him. You see, back then, homosexuality was a crime. In March 1952, Turing was convicted of gross indecency. He was given a choice between imprisonment or undergoing therapy. The therapy consisted of chemical castration through drugs, a hormone treatment designed to reduce his sexual urges. The hormonal treatment had terrible effects on Alan Turing's health, who had always been an exceptional athlete. He began to see his body weaken and gain weight. Combined with his legal, financial, and professional struggles, Alan spiraled into a deep depression. Turing was found dead in his bed on June 8, 1954. His body contained high doses of cyanide, believed to have come from a half-eaten apple found on his bedside table. In 1945, Alan designed the plans for what could have become the first modern computer. His machine was never perfected. Still, it paved the way for an entire field of research that came to be known as Turing machines. Today, we call them computers. Although his work remained classified for decades, in the years following his death, Alan Turing's story slowly began to emerge. It wasn't until the 2000s that the British government first issued a public apology, though not an official pardon. The pardon came years later, in 2013. Of course, like any movie, the Imitation Game exaggerates many aspects of Alan's personality and the events portrayed for the sake of entertainment. However, what is undeniable is his and his team's contribution to saving millions of lives and shaping the direction of technological development in the future. And that's our video on Alan Turing. Thanks for watching. If you loved exploring the stories behind iconic movies with us, make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon